Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the February installment of 30 Minutes with LinkSpring, our monthly webinar series. I'm Mark Peacock, Chief Communications Officer and Vice President of Marketing. And from all of us at LinkSpring, thank you for joining us. So for today's topic, I will be providing a look at what's ahead. What's ahead in our industry, what's ahead at LinkSpring. And I'll touch on the following points during my discussion. 1, the market. 2, some influencers affecting the market. 3, end users. 4, several trends for all of us to keep our eye on. Some impact drivers. The importance of BIoT, or Building Internet of Things. Review the value propositions and how they've changed over time. And what's ahead at LinkSpring. And then some closing comments. We are recording the webinar, and in a couple days we'll have the deck available for you. And keeping with the theme, we are going to keep this at 30 minutes. And if you have any questions, enter them in the chat function. And so let's go ahead and get started. So the first area that I mentioned we're going to look at is the market. So the building landscape in the market continues to evolve very quickly. The current market is expected to continue to grow for the foreseeable future, which is good for us all. The ability of the building automation and control systems to increase energy efficiency and reduce overall operating costs remains the major driving factors for the market. Moreover, the advancements in wireless and the interest in IoT are further driving the growth. According to Navigant research, they are predicting that global marketing automation products and services is expected to grow from the present $67 billion to just over $102 billion by the year 2025. Furthermore, smart building device connections are expected to grow from where they are today at about $2.7 billion to over $11.2 billion in 2021. The market is going from the challenge of equipment and system connectivity, which I think we can all agree and appreciate that's now a given, to one about interoperability and the exchange and integration of data from diverse systems and devices, and new techniques for managing, presenting, analyzing, and deriving value from all the amount of data that definitely is available today. We're also seeing that the BAS architecture is continuing to flatten, which means more devices are directly connecting to networks, and these edge devices are becoming more intelligent with data and analytics that are now, as I said earlier, being driven at the edge. We have moved from the technology that's driving the market to one where the business side is driving the market and the technology. When building owners and operators investigate options for projects, what we have found that the most sought after benefits are as follows. They're looking for open systems and procurement. They definitely insist and prefer and want freedom of choice. That flexibility in systems and flexibility to be able to scale is very important. They're very concerned today about future-proofing and sustainable design. So if we continue on in the presentation, I'm going to touch upon some influencers, or what I've defined as influencers. So how these influences are affecting the trends and whatnot. So number one is open source is becoming more pervasive. The IoT continues to have an influence on the market, the industry, the technology, and most importantly, customers' expectations. Rapid advances in technology are taking place and will continue for the foreseeable future. BACnet continues its rise as the protocol of choice. However, Modbus is gaining interest, especially in certain types of deployments. Other influencers include data and analytics. They seem to be at front and center now. It's all about moving data and data access, data exchange, and data consolidation, and the integrity of that data. And I'll come back to that in a little bit later. End users continue to want to work with one system integrator. They're interested in reducing the complexity, and they want the increased accountability as they get more involved in driving the product solutions and services that they want to use. I think we all can agree there's more non-traditional players that have entered the marketplace. And on the M&T consulting side, they seem to be changing, albeit a little bit slowly. They're more interested in the latest technology, especially when it comes to specifications for new building construction. Now, turn our attention to the end users themselves and what we're finding. The end users today, in our research and our voice of customers, what we're seeing is that they are well educated and more educated in building automation technology than they ever been before, and that they are stepping up their efforts to drive the markets and are insisting on more hands-on involvement and directing and specifying what brands that they want to deploy in their facilities. They're also interested in not interested in the standalone, single-source, locked-in system designs, which I'm sure we most in the past are very familiar with, and are more interested in multi-vendor, fully integrated, fair bid contracts in their open systems. So that's a little bit a view on the market, the influencers, and some observations that we've been able to ascertain in our customer research on end users. Now I want to go ahead and turn our attention to several trends that we're keeping our eye on, and we'd like to share these with you. While it's never easy to predict with certainty what is likely to happen, we believe this year holds some of the trends that will impact our industry and is helping to forego this path ahead. And looking at changes we've seen in technology and the evolving demands of the market that have taken place over the last several years, combined with the ones that are occurring today, we believe we will see unprecedented continued growth when it comes to anytime, anywhere, real-time information, and what we like to refer to as business intelligence that further drives the way we manage and operate our facilities. Also, what we're seeing, the trends, we'll continue to see a shift in how facilities are managed, being driven not just by the technology side, but by the business side. As a result, we are experiencing a shift in the value equation, moving beyond the important goal of just energy efficiency to a more holistic view that's encompassing overall performance of buildings and their increasingly sophisticated equipment systems as assets and their effect on the business's bottom line. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to touch on some of those value propositions. The architecture of our systems today will continue to collapse as more devices directly connect to our networks, the result being more direct and streamlined connectivity between systems and decision-making. This is driven by increased collaboration across the business functions, which represents potentially the greatest opportunity to transform our industry. And it's just not the economic factors that can be captured with simple ROI calculations, which are most important to today's end user. It's that combination of the economics and the rising expectations of building owners and operating management, and the users who are increasingly living in a technology environment that is more advanced than our building system. So, turning our attention to another trend is this whole concept about disruption. We've heard it, we see it every day. We believe disruption will continue, and in a good way. Advancements in our technology have long been considered great disruptors. Combine the current advancements and new developments in the technology pipeline by all types of providers with the changes taking place at the business level is truly impacting what's going on within the manufacturers of our BAS technology, as well as continuing the acceleration of the transformation of our industry. The way control systems are built and distributed will continue to evolve with seamless system-level data sharing and device-level application enablement. Again, that reference to the edge and being out on the edge. Another trend to keep in mind, and I would be remiss if I did not mention this, is cybersecurity. Cyber threats and vulnerabilities are continuing to make headlines, and yes, not just in other industries, but in ours as well. Cyber threats against the facility environment are becoming more frequent and increasingly sophisticated. And I think you've heard me, especially over the last several years, talk about the negative consequences that cyber instances can cause are disruptive and potentially catastrophic. One in particular that we are seeing, one threat that is starting to increase its level and what we're seeing in the marketplace is ransomware attacks on building automation systems, and where attackers lock up and encrypt systems, the building systems, until you are able to pay up. And we know of a few instances recently where that has occurred. Moving on to the next trend is the big bad world, as I like to refer to it, as IoT. And again, what's interesting is 3 little letters can stand for so much. You know, I think we'll all agree that IoT is, in fact, on the front line of our buildings today, and adding value to our traditional building systems is a must through IoT. It definitely is contributing to the significant shift in the way we are acquiring information, interacting with each other, and how the building owners and operating personnel are making decisions. Realizing its potential really starts with understanding its true value that it brings. As IoT continues to evolve and that journey continues, it's really not about the revolution in the technology, but rather the evolution in the technology. And it's not about connectivity. We hear a lot about billions and billions and billions of devices being connected, or the massive numbers of devices. But rather, we believe it's about delivering real and real outcomes through the world of IoT, not the number of devices. The Internet of Things and IoT is allowing us to make devices that are smarter, more powerful, offer higher levels of functionality, increase storage capabilities, and have allowed us to move from connected devices to connected intelligence. And here at Link-Spring, 2.5 years ago, we began an effort called Edge to Enterprise to really address that. And at the conclusion of my presentation today, I'll touch on some of the technologies and new products that we have coming out that do address that. One other thing concerning IoT, that we believe that this, what we call the IoT parade, will continue to get larger with an increasing number of players joining this parade in the space we all live and breathe. Our next focus, what I want to go into, and you've heard me mention this, is the edge. And as I said, we have 2.5 years ago been on a journey to take the edge head on, and successfully, and we've done so. Connecting, collecting, and processing data at the edge is becoming more important as new technology within our facilities and IoT environments become available. These new devices are definitely smarter, more powerful, offer higher levels of functionality, and are able to present direct to enterprise, direct to cloud capabilities, and become less dependent on middleware. In many cases, they will bypass the infrastructures of conventional BAS to give users more immediate solutions to their needs. The BAS system now will not necessarily always be the clearinghouse for all the data and activities related to facility management. We have access now to more places where data that is collected and processed and stored and analyzed at the edge is now available. As we're continuing our path towards greater deployment and expansion, BIoT, and I will get into that a little bit in more in-depth a little bit later on, the infrastructure such as edge-based processing and cloud-based storage, along with data transfer, will be keeping pace with the increase in the number of applications and demand for greater connectivity. With lower cost and enough computer storage and networking resources now accessible at the edge, and the availability of specific analytic applications and tools, we can expect data activity to move to the edge and become embedded in the same devices so we can get more device-generated data and analytics. And moving on to the next trend, we've talked about data in various ways, and we are looking at data now as the next utility. And accessing data from existing building automation systems, I think we can all agree, is crucial for any building project today. Data has changed the way we are doing business, access and manage performance, as we're in an era where data technologies and analytics enable us to capture data from so many different sources. And now, with efforts such as Project Haystack, that we can make the data consistent and meaningful and use it truly across multiple applications. We also see when it comes to data in our buildings and facilities that we're in an era where being able to capture the data and make it consistent from the different sources truly has moved the needle further along, where the data now can become truly actionable. While data is, again, as I've said, is technically available, the true challenge lies in working with it across multiple applications, being able to manage it and get useful information out of it and be able to do something with it. The data journey, as we see it, is on a major acceleration path and will continue to accelerate for the foreseeable future. By effectively utilizing data, the value proposition is we can reduce operating costs, drive performance, better performance, both operationally and financially, maximize the conservation of energy, and a newer value prop that the end user seem to be looking at today and beginning to start to measure is a better occupant, better tenant experience. And moving on to our next trend that we see, we've defined this as AOT, again a play off IoT, and AOT is what we're defining as analytics of things. As we know, all the devices and systems that we have can generate lots of data. In order for that data to be useful, we need analytics and it needs to be analyzed. The primary advantage of AOT is that we can aggregate that data from multiple devices and make comparisons across times and users that ultimately lead to better decisions and better performance. Building owners, operators, and commercial real estate executives tell us that on this journey to build and fulfill their strategy of maximizing their assets in their buildings is being able to utilize this data and analytics capabilities in an everyday operating and managing setting within their facilities. In order to capitalize on this, we're seeing that they are shifting their mindset regarding data and analytics as a separate application data set to more of a strategic layer and an integral part in today's building technology frameworks. Moving on to our next trend that we see, and I think the majority of our audience, which does vary out there today, is the increase of what we're seeing in the multitude of applications. As we're continuing to push forward more and more, we are developing more apps that are being created to meet the needs and the expectations of our end users. From an application perspective, apps will continue evolving to resemble customer experiences that we as consumers experience in our day-to-day life, where flexibility, speed, ease of use, intelligence, and value are the drivers. The development of these applications is moving at such a fast pace, building owners are getting a bit confused in and around the wide range of choices. However, value creation is not going to come from the applications themselves, but through their integration with one another and how they are all managed together. Our next trend that I want to touch on is the cloud. With more and more devices comes data. This creates new challenges for managing that data and trying to make sense of it, as I've mentioned. To meet this, cloud architectures will continue to go and advance into more deployments. A phrase that I'd like to use in some of the speeches I've done over the last year is something along the lines of, we are moving from the hype side to the promise of true deployment in a cloud environment, where we're seeing more SaaS and PaaS environments continuing to take place and go in the marketplace. Our next piece we want to talk about is the importance and the continuing change of IoT in the building technology space. If there's ever been a role that's changing quickly, I think we can all agree it's the role of IT as it relates to our management systems and our facility operations. I can remember when it was not that long ago when our technology and systems were viewed as a necessary evil and received only the most basic attention and resources from IT. However, we've seen this change and change rapidly over the last year, and it's only going to continue to do so as we progress in 2017 and 2018. Several influences continue to drive this increased involvement by IT, including the continuation of convergence, the transformation of our technology and systems to more of a full-blown IT, IP-based system, and the conduit that allows information to flow between a BMS, EMS, the IT side, and all the different systems throughout the operational side of a building. So again, IT's role is increasing, especially when they are being asked and required by the CEOs of organizations to help drive better performances and better financial outcomes in the management of the facilities. Moving on, which is a sort of a new area that, even though it's been around for a while, but I think it was not getting as much play as it does today, is predictive maintenance. Predictive maintenance is no longer only about maintaining a single piece of equipment to ensure reliability. Today, it's all about a macro view that includes energy consumption, system optimization, and continuous awareness of what's going on in the system or piece of equipment. With predictive maintenance, you can take a holistic view of a building's energy consumption and the performance of systems and equipment in order to optimize and make the systems more reliable in a building. As an example, from a plant-sized chiller system to elevators to lighting to IoT connected devices, is allowing a shift from prevention and repair to condition-based maintenance and real-time and management based on historical performance data. Moving on, I just want to mention here briefly the importance of wireless. As information and operational technologies continue the convergence and the need for data, wireless continues to make a more active presence in both technologies that are under use of it or being used with it, as well as being deployed in the systems. Moving on, where I want to spend a little bit of time is, I mentioned early on the building IoT, or BIoT. So what I've got here is a diagram that I came across recently as a reference model that was published by the IoT World Forum. And I really believe this particular model really relates very well with that of BIoT. The model, if you look at it, breaks down into 7 functional levels, the variety of technologies and actions that will be combined to comprise a building IoT. Devices are connected and send and receive data, interacting with the network where the data is transmitted and data is normalized and filtered utilizing edge computing. So moving on, I mentioned value propositions, and this is one of the key areas where what we have seen, where the value proposition has changed, where the value proposition used to be about where there were limited choices, there were just really focused on new construction, single building focus, multi-protocol, connectivity integration, and it was all about those coming together to drive lower operating costs. However, with this change in technology and the transformation that we're going, we have seen this change to a new value proposition or new set of things that are continuing. It's driving. We've incorporated lighting and data, the maintenance and the assets, remote access, and for the most part, it's today about efficiency, high performance, safe, sustainable, and smart. But as this, again, these trends continue to take place, the value proposition is slowly moving towards more about financial optimization, business and data intelligence, maximizing operations, and cybersecurity protection. So as the technology continues to change, so has the value propositions as we see it. All right, so we've talked about what's ahead now from the industry. So what's ahead for us here at Link-Spring? As I mentioned early on, about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we began a strong initiative about enterprise to the edge. And in moving that along and delivering on that commitment, what lies ahead? Well, it's very exciting times for us here. We have the pending release, as many of you have heard on the phone, of the Genesis Edge 534 IoT Edge device, which again is Niagara. So being able to utilize your same ProBuilder and Niagara-based tools and Fox protocol. Along with that, coming out here shortly as well, is the Onyx XM34IO series, which is a series of 34 I/O modules, which can expand the Genesis Edge 534 and the current model of the Genesis Edge 100 out there with additional I/O. And with this XM34IO, you can also extend I/O into your Genesis PC8000 and any Jace 8000 that's out there. Also, in keeping with the Edge and Edge to the Enterprise, we're coming out with a gateway and a wireless set of CTs that will enable you to capture data and send it to the gateway and then send it to wherever you would like to send it. We're working on a multitude of new applications, several new user interface enhancements, additional IoT connectivity options, and we're furthering our partners' business enhancements with some new things, some new portal enhancements, and actually a whole new portal, new and expanded educational materials, and things like that. So for Link-Spring, we've grabbed this Edge to Enterprise right from the get-go, and now we're starting to see those particular products and solution offerings available, becoming available shortly. So in closing, just want to touch on a few things that, again, to just reiterate, we're continually seeing a tremendous amount of advancements in our buildings environment. And the adoption of building system integration and intelligent building technology is continuing to expand. It's not sitting still. We're seeing a shift in how facilities are managed and operated, driven not just by the technology, but that business side, as I had mentioned. We're seeing the importance of being able to address cyber threats and vulnerabilities, and being able to transform the standard building today in truly what we've been talking about for the last several years in the industry is a truly intelligent building from top to bottom. So with that, I want to conclude this, and I thank you for your time and effort. I do have two quick questions that have come in that I see, and I'm going to have time for those, and then we'll have to close. So Mark, you mentioned IoT a lot during your presentation. In your opinion, what do you think it takes to be successful for a successful IoT implementation? Well, you know, I could sit here and go on and on and on, but I'm looking at the time. We want to wrap this up. So to kind of keep it to a short answer, I believe a successful IoT deployment requires more than just being on the internet or simply adding connectivity to a product or making that equipment smart. The successful IoT requirements require a true value proposition and a design thinking from the set-go. And most importantly, I would like to say that it requires a change in behavior, especially ours, meaning us as technology providers, several of the folks that are on the phone who are integrators and end users and OEMs. It requires us to accept that change in behavior. And last one, Mark, you talked about end users. That's kind of new to us. What do you think is the one barrier that is preventing end users from fully embracing the type of technology that we all develop and sell? I find that very interesting, you know, a good question. For me, I think from the end user perspective, and especially during the voice of customer research that we continually do on an ongoing basis, they're confused. And I think we've got to do our part to help them get around that confusion. They see so many technologies out there. That's up to us to help them get a better understanding. And then the most important one that we see is there's a fear by end users. There's a fear of failing. They don't want to fail. So in lieu of that fear, some of them are not proceeding with deploying the technology because they don't want to have that failure aspect, which, and again, we all know that's why we're all here in an industry. We're not going to let them fail. So those are the two questions. Again, I hope you appreciated the content today. I know it was a lot. We are going to make the webinar available in the next couple of days and the slides. So thank you, and we hope to see you on our next 30 Minutes with LinkSpring next month, next March. Stay tuned for the content. And again, if you have specific content you would like to see, please send it to marketing@linkspring.com, and we'll try to make it one of our sessions. Again, thanks, and have a great day.